This is the story of how Margaret Thatcher is responsible for one of the darkest, most defining bands of the 1990s. Chapter 1, Geoff. At the age of 11, in the early 1980s, after the divorce of his parents, Geoff moved with his mother to a small town in North Somerset. Through his teen years, he'd get involved with local bands, typically playing drums and occasionally DJing in hip-hop groups. None would signify what would come, though, and that he'd become a pivotal member in one of the most defining acts of the 1990s. Shortly after opening in 1989, Geoff would land his first job as a tape operator at Coach House Studios. It is here where a turning point occurred. In 1991, he was on the crew for an album called Blue Lines. This would be the breakout album from Massive Attack, and in the off hours, the band allowed him to capture some of his own work on tape. Chapter 2, Margaret. In November of 1981, shortly before Geoff and his mother moved to that small town in North Somerset, England, Margaret Thatcher's Conservative government announced a new program called the Enterprise Allowance. Initially a pilot, it was rolled out countrywide in 1983. Amidst then-current mass unemployment, the program promised a guaranteed income of £40 a week to any enrolled unemployed persons who set up their own business. The goal was to reduce unemployment while sparking renewed interest in entrepreneurship. Also among the people the scheme helped in the UK throughout the years was a man named Alan McGee. You might recognize that name. He was the founder of Creation Records. So, in a sense, Thatcher also played a key role in the shoegaze movement. But this isn't a story about shoegaze, and this is not a story about creation. Well, not about that creation. It's one about a different creation, one of a new subgenre within music and its rise in popularity worldwide. It was during a coffee break at an Enterprise Allowance course that Geoff met Beth. Chapter 3, Beth. Born and raised on a farm in Devon, England, Beth's parents, like Geoff's, divorced when she was young. She attended St. Catherine's School in North Somerset, and by the early 1990s had been earning a living singing at nightclubs in Bristol. She wanted this to be her career, and as most singers and musicians ultimately are self-employed, that led her to enroll and attend a job course through the Enterprise Allowance program in 1991. Geoff met Beth during a coffee break, and they hit it off, and it wasn't long before the two began collaborating on material for a new group. The first song that they would put to tape in Coach House Studios was a track called It Could Be Sweet. You might recognize that one. That was the first one recorded for what would eventually become their debut album, Adrian. Adrian moved to Bristol in the mid-1980s. A jazz guitarist by trade, he cut his teeth with acts like Big John Patton, Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers, and Jeff Beck. But he also had a passion for vintage instruments and film. Shortly after hearing It Could Be Sweet at Coach House Studios, Adrian met the duo of Geoff and Beth, and they began exchanging ideas. Though he collaborated with the duo and participated in their recordings, he wouldn't officially join the group until after the debut album was released. By that time, the group had taken on their moniker, which matched the name of the small town in North Somerset where Geoff and his mother had moved nearly a decade prior. The name? Portishead. Beth Gibbons, Geoff Barrow, Adrian Utley. It was like a light bulb coming on, Barrow would one day say about the moment Utley began collaborating with him and Gibbons. Barrow would teach Utley sampling, and Utley introduced Barrow and Gibbons to unconventional instruments like the cymbalum and theremin. It was during these early pre-debut sessions that they discovered they could create their own samples as opposed to just using those found on other records. Dummy. As their material began to take shape, Geoff continued to work as a producer on a variety of albums at Coach House, including acts like Primal Scream, Ride, Depeche Mode. So you have several notable artists of the day, from Massive Attack and Depeche Mode to Primal Scream and Ride. There's Barrow's additional experience as a DJ working with samples and floating around the hip-hop scene. You have Utley's jazz background, composition, and predilection towards vintage instruments and equipment. And you have Gibbons' haunting vocals. All of this mishmashed for something kind of explosive and new. And finally, of course, you have the storied politician of Margaret Thatcher, whose program led to the not-so-chance meeting that sparked the perfect collision of influences and ideas and skills to propel the creation of this new subgenre of trip-hop. The traces of trip-hop have been present before, but it wasn't until the impact Portishead and their debut album had worldwide that it kind of became a thing. This year, that album turns 30, and it just blows my mind. Let's dig into my thoughts 30 years after I was introduced to the band. You could run down a track list and touch on the nuances and traits of pretty much every single song on this album. You got atmospheric opener, Mysterons, which features some of that scratching that you hear consistently throughout the album. That's followed by the popular Sour Times, in which Gibbons sings with heartache because nobody loves me. It's true, not like you do. I'm eating my mustache. The notable echoing clang in the song is pulled from Argentine-American pianist and composer Lalo Schifrin and his Danube Incident from 1968. You have the cool swagger of It Could Be Sweet, that first song from the band I mentioned before, with solid beat topped by jazz-tinged vocals from Gibbons. Then there's Wandering Star, which samples Eric Burdon's Magic Mountain and features some hand-scratching on the turntable. And that's something essentially unheard of in non-rap music of the day. Flip it over to the B-side, and Numb opens with a metallic drum beat and, well, more scratching. One of my personal favorites is the song Roads, which opens with this vibrating piano chords. To me, the song embodies the darkness trip-hop is known for. Gibbons drops her vocals in, filled with pain and agony, and the wah-wah guitar that chimes in a little bit later is just pure perfection. And that piano, it's a Fender Rhodes. Then there's Biscuit, which pulls in more samples and scratching, this time zeroed in on a pitched-down male vocalist repeating, "I'll never fall in love again." And finally, Glory Box wraps things up with another top single from the album, this time with samples of Ike's Rap 3 by Isaac Hayes. From Barrow's masterful use of sampling to the trio's seamless blend of disparate elements, Portishead creates a listening experience entirely cohesive and thoroughly immersive. And that brings us full circle. Dubbed as the album that popularized the trip-hop subgenre, the music on Dummy extends well beyond its traits. You get rap, you get soul, jazz, blues, rock, and a whole bunch more. From cool swaggers to mellow downbeats, you get tracks like Glory Box that almost have a sneer in the vocal deliveries, to others that are essentially pain vocalized and harmonized. Dummy went on to win numerous awards, including the prestigious Mercury Prize in 1995, beating out the likes of Oasis. In 2019, the album was certified platinum in the UK, and by 2008, it had sold 3.6 million copies worldwide. And you can trace it all back to an entrepreneurship scheme created by none other than Margaret Thatcher. Like her or not, she played a pivotal role in the creation of trip-hop and its popularization in the mid-1990s. Now, 1 year after the release of Dummy, another band I loved released an equally pivotal album. Next, join me as I dig into the liner notes and share some good nuggets from within the 4 LP box set of Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. As one commenter noted many moons ago, this dude is a damn nerd. I am Andy, this is the FensePost Vinyl channel, and I'll see you in the next video.